Cheryl Hines, I have never in my life heard of frost-proof Florida.
Really? It's tiny.
Tell me about frost-proof Florida.
Well, it's in Central Florida, and it's a small little town. Doesn't have a traffic light. And my grandparents grew up there, and it's mostly orange groves, and they call it frost-proof because it's supposed to never freeze.
But your father?
My father grew up there, yes.
And then you moved to Albany, Georgia?
For 1 year, we lived in Albany, Georgia, yes.
Albany, Georgia. Do you remember those years well?
That was a tough year in
Tell
Albany.
us about Albany.
Well, it was tough. I mean, my father had gotten a job at Burger King.
As a manager? As
a manager, and felt like we needed to move to Albany, Georgia. And I think I was in 5th or 6th grade. So to start in a new town where you don't know anybody, and everything seemed a little, everything was different, right? So I'm meeting different kids. The one thing that I remember about Albany is there was a girl that everybody called at school that everybody called Skinny Bones. And I asked one of the boys, I said, her name can't really be Skinny Bones. What is her real name? And he said, oh, nobody knows. I said, does she want to be called Skinny Bones? And he said, I don't know, I think so. That's what everybody calls her. And I went up to her and I said, hi, I'm Cheryl. I just moved here. What's your name? And she said, Arlene. I said, oh, okay.
Nobody ever asked?
No. And that's, and it was, it was eye-opening just because you're sort of dropped into a place where all these kids have been together for so long, and, kids make up nicknames for each other. And it was in that moment that I thought, I'm going to learn everybody's real name and not just what the other kids are calling them.
You laughed a lot. You always found things funny when you were a kid in the classroom. And one of the stories I was struck by is the stress that you placed on yourself in taking a test, because you did not compromise. You always wanted A's. But then your teacher pulled you to the side and gave you one of the best lessons in life. Tell us about that moment.
Well, I just expected the best from myself. And I knew I could get an A on my test if I had enough time. But then the timer would go off and we would have to put pencils down, and I would burst into tears. And I was old enough at this point that I shouldn't be bursting into tears. But I couldn't help myself. It's just what I did. My teacher, took me outside of the classroom. She sat me down on the curb right there on the sidewalk and said, why do you cry so much? I said, because I don't have enough time to finish my tests. And she said, well, what happens if you don't get an A on your test? And I said, well, I mean, it would, the world would fall apart, basically. And she said, are your parents hard on you with your grades? And I said, no, not at all. They don't even ask. And she said, I think you need to save your tears for important things. She said, next time they say pencils down, you have the urge to cry, just tell yourself it's gonna be okay. No matter what happens, no matter what grade you get, it's going to be okay.
You saw yourself sort of as a hillbilly, growing up country, poor, no rags to riches stories here, but you were just everyday people. I mean, you struggled, you didn't really, and the other thing is, we're gonna get to this, you didn't even get married until you were in your mother thought that you would never marry. I mean, was it 38?
Yes.
38 years old. And you did not land on curb until you were 34.
Yes.
That's ancient.
Yes.
In Hollywood, it's ancient.
Yes.
But before we get to that, because we have so much to talk about, of course, Cheryl Hines is our guest today for the full hour. You really struggled. You really never knew if you would ever make it.
Yeah.
And even when you made it, you were still waiting on that call to see what would happen with what you had just filmed, which we'll get to. But I want you to talk about growing up and the love that you had for your parents and the support. There was Chris, Becky, and Michael, that family bond that was your stability. It was the foundation, not just at the beginning of your life, but continues today. Because without Becky, you probably wouldn't have got through this book.
Oh my gosh, Becky helped me with every word of that book. Yes, you're right. I grew up with, we didn't have a lot of money. You know, I was on free lunch at school and bought my prom dress at Goodwill. And we were really happy. I mean, I'm sure it was stressful for my parents as far as money was concerned, but we played games, we put on shows for, you know, the neighbors, we laughed a lot, and that was the foundation of my life, that it didn't really matter what we had or didn't have. It was never the focus, but we had each other, and that gave me the strength to just do anything in life.
Talk about, because I know you juxtaposed later on in the book, your daughter Kat going away to school, and how you and your friend, I don't know if his name was Camille, but how, it was Camille.
It was.
How miserable you guys were.
Yeah.
And then you thought about the fact that your mother, father felt the same way when you decided to leave the fly out to pursue your ambitions, but you always knew that you wanted to be a part of the improv, you wanted to be a comedian, you knew you could be funny, you always knew that. Talk about going out to California. I think Paul, your friend at the time, Eddie.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. You guys go out to Los Angeles, you know, struggling together, and talk about the bar stories when you really wanted to take that class. You had no money. They felt sorry for you. They felt they could stop you from talking so much, and they scrounged all the money to put you in that class, which was a game changer. But talk about that support system, because it was so important to who you are today.
Yes. Well, you're right. When I moved to LA, I didn't have anything. And it was hard because my whole family lives in Florida, and I'm very close to them. And I also felt that I had to move to LA or New York if I was going to really pursue an acting career. And so I chose LA. I had a friend who was living there that I went to high school with, and got a bartending job. And even, it's funny because when I was writing this book, I bartended at this hotel, the Intercontinental, for probably 6 years. And
the hotel, by the way, that sequestered all the jurors during the O.J. Simpson trial. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, yes.
I mean, really, you could not write this script. If somebody wrote this book as fiction, I would say that's too much. You know, you got to take out some of that. That doesn't sound like it's real. But yes, the O.J. Simpson jurors were sequestered
and
there.
Judge Ito.
And Judge Ito, and that was when all of that was going off in L.A.
But you couldn't breathe a word of it.
No, it was a secret. We weren't allowed to tell anybody they were there. But I also found great support there at the hotel with other people that I was working with. And I found out about this improv comedy theater called called the Groundlings, where they teach improv. And I went to a show, and it's, you know, it feels like you're watching Saturday Night Live in person in a small theater, because it's that same.
Now, this is not where Phil Hartman's sister helped assisted you, right? You got to tell that story too.
Oh, okay.
At the bar, you leaving stuff out. I mean, this is your bar. Come on now.
Well, there's so much to talk about. Okay, so
you're at the bar.
I'm at the bar. I'm bartending.
And talk about your history of bartending. That's where you network. That was your networking place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, but you know, back in the day, there weren't that many female bartenders. Don't know why, but
no, and there weren't that many female DJs.
I know,
like you were. We're gonna get to that in your music, okay?
And so I got a bartending job at this hotel, and a woman came and sat at the bar, and I was talking to her. She got out a map of LA, and she asked me if I could help her find Melrose Avenue. And I said, sure, what are we looking for? And she said, I'm looking for the Groundlings Theater because that's where my brother got his start. I said, oh, who is your brother? And she said, Phil Hartman. And at the time, Phil Hartman was still on SNL. And I thought, whoa, you're Phil Hartman's sister? This is crazy that I'm standing so close to you. And asked her about the theater, and she said, it's an improv theater, sketch comedy theater, and scouts from SNL go to find new talent there. So the next night that I had off, I went and watched a show, and I knew that's where I needed to be.
So you were captivated.
Oh my gosh, I felt like I found my people, that I need to be with these people. But I didn't have any money. I was really poor. I didn't have a refrigerator. It didn't come with an apartment. But that's all I would talk about when I would go to work, is the Groundlings. You wouldn't believe this sketch. You wouldn't believe that improv. You wouldn't believe this performer. Talked about it so much that on my birthday, they all chipped in to pay for my first class there because I couldn't afford to take a class. But they knew that that's what I really, really wanted. So they all chipped in, paid for my first class, and Lisa Kudrow was my first improv teacher there.
Wow, she was a big deal.
Oh yeah.
She was big. Cheryl Hines is our guest. Her new book, Unscripted, written by her. She and her sister Becky. She's our guest. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back. Cheryl Hines made America laugh for so many decades. Curb Your Enthusiasm was on the air for 24 hours, and it's still in rerun now. From the sharp wit of Curb Your Enthusiasm to the bright lights of Hollywood, which she pursued and took years and years and years before she got her break. But behind the laughter, here's a woman with us today with this incredible story. Let me tell you, it's a story of faith, family bonds that are so deep, it doesn't matter. It was so unconditional, those bonds. Failure, and she finally found her voice in a world that often tries to write your script for you. She said, no way, I write my own script. So in her new book, Unscripted, she pulls back the curtain, revealing this phenomenal Wonder Woman behind the comedy, the lessons behind that laughter. Sometimes there was a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of sadness behind that laughter, and the truth behind the fame. I never forget her telling the story when she got her Walk of Fame honors in Hollywood. Boy, but today, for the rest of the show, we go unscripted, a raw, real, and riveting conversation about her life, her accolades, her stories, love, and learning to embrace chaos. Thank you so much for joining us today on this edition of the show. I really want you, because when I read your story, and I tell people they should read this book. Yeah. Why? Because I've never read a book or watched any kind of documentary that really helps you really understand what it takes to make it in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. This is clearly a blueprint of what you would do, but you never compromise your morals, nor your integrity. Even when someone had another agenda for you, you always had your friends. Even if you said, in 30 minutes, you come up to this hotel room and get me out of here. You will always have presence of mind. But talk about the struggles through your book of making it in Hollywood.
Well, it is hard in Hollywood, right? It's because everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to, not everybody, but a lot of people want to be an actor. A lot of people want to be a writer. And and there are just only so many jobs to be had. So you have to figure out a way to make a name for yourself. And for me, yes, I moved out there when I was 25, and then I did not get my, break on Curb Your Enthusiasm until I was 34. So.
But talk about the fact of not getting it until 34, because even you have friends and family saying to you, have you thought about doing something else?
Yeah.
Maybe this is not the road that you should be on. Your mother was concerned. Even though they supported you, they said, Cheryl, come on.
Yeah.
Don't you think your time has passed you by? Talk about in the book what made you, when others could not see the vision, you decided not to ever give in.
Because I learned during that time of struggle that I couldn't wait for happiness, because I thought I will be happy when I get a job as an actress. That's when I'm going to be happy. But if you're 25 and you don't know when or if you're going to get that job, and that's a plan for failure. You're never going to be happy if you're putting it off or you're thinking it's going to come when something else happens. So I learned even getting an audition could bring me happiness.
Okay, take us to Larry David.
Yes.
And when things began, just give a little more light in the darkness.
So Larry David, so I told you I started taking classes at the Groundlings Theater. I learned about improv and sketch comedy. And then I got an agent because agents would come to this little theater to look for, up and coming talent. So then I got an agent because I was studying there, working there, writing, performing. And I got that because I was working at the hotel and I met Phil Hartman's sister, and I got the class because the people around me cared about me and bought my first class there. So everything was leading to the next thing. So when Curb Your Enthusiasm came around, Larry David was just doing a 1-hour special on HBO. It wasn't meant to be a series. And he was looking for an unknown actress, which was great for me, because at that point I was an unknown actress. And he wanted to do like a mockumentary. He wanted it to look like a documentary of him returning to stand-up. Larry David created Seinfeld with Jerry Seinfeld. So he had this amazing career already, and now he was going to go back to his stand-up roots and do a 1-hour special. So I was performing a sketch that I had written, and the director of the 1-hour special saw me in that sketch and invited me to come audition to meet Larry David, because he thought my sense of humor and Larry's might be a good match. So when I went to audition, there was no script. They didn't tell me anything about it. They just said, it'll all be improvised. It needs to feel real, because we wanted to feel like a documentary. And don't touch Larry when you get in there, because he doesn't like for people to touch him. And I said, okay. So then I went in, I met Larry for the first time, and he shook my hand. So I realized, okay, I see what I'm working with. He doesn't want people to touch him, but he'll shake your hand, so okay. And he said, let's do an improv and just imagine that we have kids and I don't eat chicken anymore.
But what is important here, what I read in the book, is that you could never cave in.
Right.
It's very important. You never say no. You have to always keep pushing the envelope with him, which was
well, you're right, because so he told me I don't eat chicken anymore. And that's all you need to know for this
But don't
scene.
agree with it.
But he didn't tell me, that's all they gave me. But so then as an improviser, I have to use that information in whatever way I think would be best for the scene, right? So then we start talking, and he said, "What's for dinner?" And I said, little potatoes and green beans and chicken cacciatore. And he said, "I just told you I don't eat chicken anymore." I said, you don't have to eat the chicken. And he said, "Well..."
You said the kids would eat the chicken.
Yeah,
The kids
we
would eat the
still eat chicken.
Right.
And he said, "Well, why would we be having it if I don't eat chicken?" Right, because we still eat chicken. You don't have to eat it. And that was basically the improv, back and forth. And then I left, went to the elevator, and then the casting director came back and said, "Will you do one more scenario with Larry?" I said, "Yes." So I go back in, and he said, "Can I talk to you about something?" He said, "I don't think you put enough milk in the kids' cereal bowl." I said, "Well, I cover the flakes." And he said, "Just can you fill it up to the top with the milk?" I said, "I cover the flakes, and that's good enough. It's a waste of milk to fill it up to the top." And he said, "Well, why can't you just fill it up to the top?" I said, "Because what's the point of extra milk? If they want a glass of milk, they can drink it." And that, once again, was another improv.
Just that simple.
Just that simple. And then they called me later and said I got the job. But what was interesting when you talked to Larry about it later, when I talked to him about it, he said that either some people wouldn't bring up the chicken at all, because he told him he's not eating chicken. So then you make something else. But I knew as an improviser, there was a reason he told me that he's not eating chicken, and that must be part of the
scene. And also,
scene.
what comes across in your book, you may have taken a long time to get that age 34, but you were very mature. Yeah. You're much more sophisticated than young people who hungered for it. You had a certain intuition about you, and that was important.
Well, thank you. I think what you're speaking to, and one of the lessons that you learn in improv, is to trust yourself, because you don't have a script. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't know if it's going to be funny, if it's going to be stupid, if it's going to be silly, if the other person's going to like it or not. But you have to trust yourself that it's going to be perfect. Whatever you said was the right thing to say. So that it's a good life lesson, doing improv, because you learn, trust yourself. Connect with somebody, and if you're connecting with somebody in a genuine way, then there's no wrong answer.
The thing that really struck me about this book is what an unconditional, not only sister, daughter, friend you are. It's just unconditional. Whether it was Eddie losing his friend who died, your best friends, whether it was your brother Mike dying all of a sudden, you get in that call, whether it's your favorite nephew who you dedicated the book to, little Michael, you were always there. You never made an excuse, no matter what you're doing, not to be there. And you've had a lot of hurt and a lot of pain in your life. Talk about that aspect of the people that are no longer here, that has really helped fortified you throughout your life.
I think when you lose somebody so close to you, I mean, it's complicated. They're very complicated emotions, because for me, I feel sorry for myself that I'm not going to have that person in my life anymore. And you feel angry, and you start missing them immediately, and then you think, so my life is never going to be good after this because that person's gone. And then you have time with it, and you realize that person's still with you, just in a different way. You're not going to be able to pick up the phone and talk to that person, but they're inside you, inside me. So my friends that passed, my brother, my nephew, they're all with me all the time and give me strength and make me laugh. I'll see something that I know they would love, and it still brings me joy.
Yeah, but it's interesting when you were telling the story about your sister at the time she was giving birth to twins, and then months later, Michael was born, but there was something wrong, and you was introduced to the fact that he has cerebral palsy, and you know deep down that it could be a short life. But even the story you told about when his father had the heart attack, how he suddenly changed, he knew something is wrong, and even during his death season, you were in the room and you felt that he was there, your brother was in the room. And what you were saying, because a lot of people don't realize you have a Catholic background, you went to church when you were growing up. There's a staple of your background that comes across in this book. But there was a spiritual dimension to you that made you realize, even though Michael may live a couple of more weeks, you knew it was just a matter of time, but his father came back. And on the day he was dying, his father did come back. You felt his presence.
Yes. Yes. So
think about that. I'm gonna take a break. Think about that. I'm gonna give you a chance because I know. Yeah, think about that. Cheryl Hines, Unscripted. We're Unscripted, and we'll be back. I'm sorry.
I know.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence, there's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. Cheryl, we were discussing something very emotional, but I was talking to you about the moment and the spiritual intuition that came out. You just knew. And you were at peace with it. That's what you said in the book, show me a sign.
Yeah.
You did ask for a sign, and you got it.
Yes. So my brother Chris had died, maybe 4 years before my nephew, Michael, his son, Michael was Chris's son, was clearly dying. And when I flew from LA to Orlando to be with my family and to be with Michael, and my family was waiting for a sign from Michael to wake up to see if he was still with us.
But when you walked in, you knew immediately he was deceased. You said, he's dead. You said it.
Not only did I know that he was gone, but I knew that my brother Chris was in the room. Right. He was filling the room, and he was there for Michael, and it was powerful, and my family was having a hard time because, it would be a case of having to take him off of a life support. And just a terrible, terrible position for anyone to be in. But the organs, when you realized the organs were going to give, I think it was 8 people were given life as a result
of young Michael's death, that gave you some peace. It doesn't give you, like you said, you never heal from death. You talked about in your book how it can strike you in different ways, but that gave you some satisfaction.
Yes, when we knew we had lost Michael, and decided that he would be an organ donor. My brother Mike is like he's a big country guy, And Mike and I had the overnight shifts. We stayed with little Michael. Everybody stayed, we made sure somebody was with him 24 hours a day while we figured out what was going to happen with him medically, if he would be able to, if there were people out there that matched him that could use one of his organs. And the day we found out that there was a boy who matched for Michael's heart, my brother, we cried in a way that was, hard to describe, because we didn't want to let go of Michael, but we looked at each other and we knew that on the other side of, the phone call was a family that just got the news that their kid was going to have a healthy heart. So there was something about that it reminded us that there's something bigger in life.
Life can serve a greater purpose, even in death.
Yeah.
Yes, what you realize. I tell you what fascinated me also about your family dynamics is how your family dynamics prepared you for politics. Because Chris was a Republican.
Yes.
And you were a Democrat
Yes.
at the time. And you guys always had these fierce debates.
Yes.
And you did all you could for hours to try to convince him to sway to your side. But you grew up, but you always respected people who had different opinions.
Yes.
And different perspectives.
Yes, Chris and I would have long talks, and actually we even went to Capitol Hill together a few times because Michael, because he had cerebral palsy, he was always in a wheelchair and had limited speech and had limited physicality. So we would go and talk to senators, Congress people about disabilities and what the disability community might need. And it was funny because he was Republican, I was a Democrat, and it didn't matter.
But you worked both sides.
We worked both sides. Yeah. And we always, and it never crossed over into a hateful, mean
Not
place.
speaking.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
not speaking.
hard.
I love this story, and I'm gonna go back a little bit about how you got involved with the high schools, the cleaning, how you refurbished these schools, and more people were coming to you, and you got Larry, and everybody contributed and pitched in. You became a very strong proponent of education, and you realized the understanding of having kids in an environment that they felt good about.
Yeah. Well, I come from Becky, my sister, and Mike. They're both educators. They're both teachers. And I was volunteering with Read Across America. I would go to the school in Compton and read to the kids. And at some point I wanted to reach out and maybe donate some playground equipment or something. And I cold called the principal, Dr. Jackie Sanderlin. And I said, hey, this is Cheryl. I come to your school every so often, but I want to be more involved. I don't even know what I'm asking you to do, but I just wanted to connect with you. And she said, come to the school as soon as you can. I said, okay. And I went, and she showed me around the school, and we just connected immediately. And we decided, okay, we're going to put in a new playground in this school. And Jackie and I organized the neighborhood. We organized my friends. We put on a fundraiser. We did a funny show at the Groundlings, And with that money and reaching out to the school board, I mean, we had to do things, you know, the proper way.
But
go
you
through all
were
the channels.
you were an agent for change. I will tell the audience something I really respect about Cheryl, which I wish could be in every situation in a marriage that doesn't work out and you go through divorce. I love the story about your first husband, Paul, and Thanksgiving, you had no idea what to do with the turkey. She came over pregnant. They basted turkey, cooked care of the turkey. But your ex-husband, the father of Kat,
Yes.
this is your heart, Kat. You guys have always maintained. You could go on vacations together.
Yes.
With your current husband.
Yes.
I mean, that to me is remarkable.
It is remarkable. It's really special. Yes. So Paul, we were married for 7 years, and it was difficult. It didn't work out. And we knew it wasn't working out. We didn't let it get to a hateful place. We didn't let it get to a hateful place. And we actually took off our wedding rings at the same time. And we stayed really close friends. So it's been a blessing.
For your daughter. And you,
for my daughter.
That's what mothers will do. They don't turn the fathers against the child and split. You want that father in her life.
Yes. And then my husband Bobby is also great, because when he met me.
Oh, let me stop you before you get to Bobby, because I want to tell your story, because a lot of people like to have you on to talk about Bobby. This is about you and your book. This is your story, okay? But here's what really I was taken back with him. You know how to hear this? She knew nothing about the Kennedy family, nothing about their fame. It was not something they grew up. When she was growing up, I think she was 10 or 12 years old. Jimmy Carter was president, you understand? And when Larry David, who introduced you to Bobby, you guys met. It was no big deal. It was almost 3 years later before you guys connected. And I must tell you, I knew what he was doing when he took you out on the water. And I knew what was going on. You may have been naive, but I knew what was going on. But you know, the thing that impressed me, you also helped us to make him to be human. He's always there for you.
Yeah.
Unconditional, no matter what's going on with your family, with your mother, if there's death, if there's sickness. In the middle of a campaign, he would stop. But since you brought up Bobby, this was my best story, and one of my favorite stories in the book, was when you realized it was not going to work out for him when he was running for president. He was in right after the president was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. There was a meeting right after that. You should have known something was up, by the way. And you were called, and Secret Service said, no, we're taking you straight to the meeting. And of course, your friends were already giving you a hard time. But I found it interesting that in that meeting changed your life forever. But you were never a political person, not something you want. But the thing about it, with your husband, he's your husband. He's not Bobby Kennedy. He's not the secretary of HHS. He's just Bobby.
Yes.
And you guys have a mixed, blended family.
Yes, you're right. So Bobby ran for president. He was still running at the time when the assassination attempt on President Trump happened. And President Trump wanted to talk to Bobby. And so Bobby flew to Milwaukee. The Republican convention was going to start that day. That was the morning of the Republican convention. And I flew to Milwaukee because I was going to talk to Bobby when he got out of that meeting. And then when I landed, security said, "Oh, ma'am, we're taking you right to the meeting." And I said, "Oh, I don't need to be in the meeting." And they said, "No, we're going to the meeting." And then suddenly I'm walking with the Secret Service and everybody's, down the hall, through the back hallways of a hotel. I couldn't tell you what hotel. To this day, I don't even know where we were.
Because you went through a garage.
Went through a garage. Right. You're going through tunnels. You're going through service elevators. You don't see anybody. And then they opened the door and it was President Trump.
It's your first time meeting him?
It was my first time meeting him.
First time.
President Trump, Bobby was already in there. Susie Wiles, who is now chief of staff, the first female chief of staff, which is impressive. She's an impressive person. And Amaryllis Fox, who's my daughter-in-law, who was running Bobby's campaign. And I met President Trump for the first time, shook hands, and he was very kind and warm to me. And
But you were nervous.
I was
Concerned.
I was very stressed.
Hold up. She was stressed. In fact, I remember once you met Trump, what it started happening, your beehives, your body, your lips, you became deformed. It was crazy that you told all this.
And I showed the picture of
I saw it. Listen, we got to talk about her meeting Trump, and she went into beehives. It had never happened to her in her life. We got to talk about it. We'll be back. Don't go away. See, I wasn't ready to talk about Bobby. I was going.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
So we're back. You had a crazy reaction, allergic reaction when you met Trump. But go ahead.
Well, right. So there was a lot of stress involved. Bobby was still running. There was just an assassination attempt on President Trump, and we met with him, and he was very pleasant, very
engaging.
Very engaging.
Yeah.
And they had a great connection.
You could see the chemistry between
Bobby and,
yes.
and President Trump. And then when I walked out of the meeting, I broke out into hives. I just broke out into hives. And then they told us we were going to get Secret Service protection, and then now we're meeting.
But only for him.
Only for him.
You would not get it for you and the kids.
It's usually for the family, but in this case, it will just be for him. And so I feel the hives like keep coming, and then later that night, I feel something happening with my face, and I asked my friend Stephanie, I said, is something happening with my lips? And she said, yeah, you should go look at that. And my lips were swelling so much to the point I thought my bottom lip was gonna bust. And there's a picture in there that I hesitated putting in there because it's bad.
It's bad. I saw it. It's bad.
It's hard to even know that that's me, but I was having such a reaction. I had to go to the emergency room. And the doctor asked me if I was allergic to anything. I said, no. And he said, I think it's from stress. Are you under some sort of stress? I said, I think I am. He said, okay, you need to stop being so stressed. Oh, okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. So listen, he had already mentioned you early on that he was considering running for president, and you finally got on board with it, and then you realized there was no pathway for him becoming president. But then, boy, reality, and then you were nervous about him going to the first rally and how they were going to react to Bobby, and Trump built him up and they loved him, but still, your friends, your friends began to show their true colors. Let's talk about it.
You know, it's interesting that you say true colors, because I feel like this journey, especially in the last few years, has been a lot about people's true colors. Yeah. And you know, what people are capable of and what they're not capable of. Some people really are not capable of separating politics from,
personal relationships.
Yeah, personal relationships.
Yeah, they're not.
And it was surprising to me. But yeah, there was a lot of, I had people calling me saying, you cannot let Bobby do this, which is also an interesting call to get. I can't let Bobby do what he needs to do. I
love the story, which I think really captured Bobby Kennedy in the book, the skunk story on the beach. Wow, and the skunk never sprayed him.
No.
He walked along the beach They spotted a skunk. You got to read this story. Spotted a skunk. Bobby loved animals. That's why when they were trying to make the story out, but he abused this animal, you said,
No.
he loves animals.
Yeah, he loves animals.
But he saw this skunk on the beach.
And everybody was running away.
From the skunk.
Everybody was terrified of this little skunk on the beach. And Bobby said, "What's going on?" And they said, there's a skunk. And of course, Bobby, everyone else running away from the skunk, and Bobby calmly walks up to the little skunk. And
Escort.
Yeah. And the skunk looks at him and raises her tail. And Bobby turns to her, and they look at each other for a long time, and everybody's just quiet on the beach. What's going on? And then she puts her tail down and starts walking.
Because she realized he was not a threat.
Yeah. And then he walks with her, and he's guiding her off the beach, and then she would stop and put her tail up again, and he'd look at her, and they'd stare at each other until she realized he wasn't a threat.
But
put her tail down.
You really put your foot down on the emu.
Yeah, we had an emu, which is, it's like
For
an
cat.
ostrich.
Yeah.
For cat.
Yeah,
Yes, my daughter
You put
Cat.
your foot down. The emu didn't like you.
The emu, and listen, the feeling was mutual. I wasn't crazy about the emu.
Yeah.
But yeah, this giant emu, it was like 6 feet tall, would
Right.
chase me around the backyard. I finally had to walk out with a shovel to defend myself, because they can be aggressive. I never had to hit the emu. But at some point I did say to Bobby, it's me or the emu.
And the emu had to go.
And the emu had to go.
The other thing I love about the book is that there's nothing that you could not talk to him about. Even the issue with the reporter and the allegedly infidelity, and you were just in a state of shock because loyalty is so important to you. And no matter what the truth is, no matter what it is, when you're in a marriage, you got to work things out. You can't grow more distant when there's something that's troubling you. You got to embrace it and have a conversation. Because what the media reports, what I realized from the book, there are a lot of lies that the media tells about the event you had at your Georgetown home and said you had to be vaccinated unless you get the COVID test. But the thing that you've decided to do, you're not going to allow the media to tell you who your husband is and what he's doing. Mm-hmm. You're going to find out for yourself.
Right.
Talk about that.
Right. So that's also been I've learned a lot, right, in the last few years, because I know that because you know that everything you can't believe everything you read, but then when it's about you, and then you know what the truth is, and you're reading something that's completely different, it's eye-opening, because you feel like, how can somebody write that if that's not even what happened? But they can.
And they do.
And if they write it, then other people can repeat what they wrote, because they'll say, oh, a source said. All anybody has to say is a source said, and they can write anything. So, yes, in this time, during the election, it was already chaos. It's crazy. And then a story comes out, and then everybody's talking and saying, this is what happened, this is what happened. And, there's an instinct to separate, for me anyway, separate myself. It's like, I don't want to be a part of this, whatever it is. And like you just said, if you're married, you've got somebody that you've said, I'm with you.
For better or worse.
For better or for
worse. In sickness and in health, until death us do part.
Yeah, so I had to resist the urge to
But here's the good news. He's willing to talk to you.
Oh, yes. No.
That's the beautiful thing about the book. He had no issue telling his wife the facts.
Yes,
You gotta respect that.
Yes. So that was everything, right? Because what do people say? It's easier to love somebody than to trust somebody.
Well
and
said.
so, what is the trust? And how many people in your life do you really trust?
How do you, I gotta bring this up. You loved your mother-in-law, Ethel Kennedy. You just loved her. She passed away. There's all these stories about what happened when Bobby gave the eulogy at the funeral. Some didn't want to give it, but I didn't realize that his brother on the front row had a profanity-laced episode, and while your husband was speaking, and the priest assumed that he was saying something he did not say, should be saying, and they cut him off in the middle of his eulogy. But you had the courage to write that in the book. I was stunned. That takes a lot of bravado to put in a book, okay?
Well,
you wanted to set the record straight.
Yeah, because it's not fair. You know, because the hard part about these stories, right, that people write, if they're not true, you could spend every day, that's not true, trying to defend it, trying to set the record straight. But something as important as that, when Bobby was eulogizing his mother, and the priest cut him off because his brother was making a scene, I wouldn't have put it in the book, even though I thought it was it was not a good moment.
Yeah, here's the thing I respect about you, and I say this so sincerely, is that you wrote this book.
Yeah.
It was a catharsis for you.
Yeah.
It was a healing for you. And you were so successful and had everything going for you before you ever met your husband.
Yeah.
You happened to fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
You did. You were enamored by his intellect, his lawyering, the environment, his love for animals, climbing 15 hours up a mountain. You'd never seen anything like this.
Right.
A dynasty, the education, that appealed to you, and you married him. And you're still in love with him today. And if people can't accept that, that's their problem.
Right.
But you're gonna hold on to your family and your marriage no matter what the outside says. And listen, that's why I tell people, this book, you're still unscripted, okay? Don't try to script Cheryl Hines. She is unscripted, okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you for reading it. I really love talking to you. That's so nice.
It's my pleasure. You gotta read the book.
Yeah.
That's respect. You gotta go out, the book is out, Amazon.com, Cheryl Hines, Unscripted. I must tell you, probably one of my favorite conversations, because it is. I love the book. That was the thing about it. I loved it. And curb your enthusiasm. I'm Armstrong Williams. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Here it is, Unscripted.
Thank you so much.